Hey, I'm Nicole. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to part 3 of my video series all about creative sewing. In this video, we're going to be talking about pattern mixing. This is where you take two different prints or patterns of fabrics and mix them together in one garment. This is something I get asked about all the time because this is a technique that I use quite a lot in my sewing. I tend to shy away from what I call homogeneous sewing, which is where you just have one single fabric in one single print or pattern and you use that across your entire garment, from the collar to the cuffs to the main garment and everything else. While there is obviously a place for that, I really love to add in those little unexpected elements into my garments, whether it's a contrast print on a collar or a cuff or somewhere else, or mixing the patterns up entirely even within the main garment. It's something that not only adds visual interest, but it really does so much to elevate the garment and give it more of a designer feel rather than a high street or a homemade feel. However, it is a delicate art that requires a certain amount of sensibility. If you don't quite get it right, you can end up with something that just looks like a bit of a patchworked mess, which there's nothing wrong with that if that's your vibe. But if you wanted to do it in a more elevated and elegant way, in this video, I'm going to show you my top tips and techniques for how I choose and combine different prints and patterns in different fabrics in the same garment. I'm going to share with you the 3 guidelines or sensibilities that I tend to use when I'm choosing which prints to mix together that I think will go harmoniously and complement each other really well. Now, the first of my go-to techniques for pattern mixing is to mix brightly coloured prints with a monochrome fabric. I tend to stock monochrome fabrics in lots of different patterns, which I can mix and match with my coloured prints. So it's everything from black and white stripes, chevrons, animal prints. Here I've got a zebra print, a leopard print, and even stripes and simple chevrons, really simple designs in a white and a solid colour. And generally speaking, I don't know why it works, but I find that mix and matching monochrome with patterns just seems to work. I have used this so many times across lots of different designs and garments that I've made, and now I'll show you just a few examples. The second technique is about finding a good mix of big prints versus small prints. Generally, for the main body of the garments that I'm making, I will be choosing a large print. So, for example, a print that has quite a big repeat or a big motif, and I will pattern mix or contrast that with a fabric that has a smaller repeat. So a smaller pattern or a smaller repeat contrasting with a big pattern or a big repeat, I find tends to work quite well. I will use the small repeat for things like necklines, sleeve cuffs, and those little trimmings and details, and I will use the big print for the main body of the garment. Here now are a few examples of how I've utilised this technique. Third technique, or the third thing I look for when I am pattern mixing different prints, is to try and make sure that at least one or more of the colours in one of your prints directly matches one or more of the colours on the other print. So here I have got this print here, and if you look here, this is something I would probably find as a good pattern match mix, because the yellow of the horse matches the yellow of the background fabric here, and this blue matches this blue. So by tonally matching different aspects of the colour schemes, even if the prints are wildly different, will pretty much guarantee that you will have a pattern mix that will work harmoniously. Here's another example of 2 prints that I have pattern mixed before. Here I have a large pink print with a feather detail, and I have this other print which is also quite busy, but because they both pick up the same colour pink, they both pick up the blues, together they work really harmoniously as a pattern mix. Using that same principle, I could probably throw in this fabric as well. you can see that this pink directly matches these two pinks, and so this would be another print that would sit pretty harmoniously with both of these also. And that's it. Those are my 3 top tips for successful pattern mixing. Obviously, this is not an exact science. There are times when, in theory, 2 patterns should mix well, but in reality they don't, or vice versa. There are times when you can have a real hodgepodge of different patterns and colorways, and you put them together, and even though it shouldn't in theory work, it does. This is all just about experimentation and just having a bit of fun. One thing I will say is that it really helps if you have a certain color palette that you prefer or that you generally stick to. For example, I had my colors analyzed several years ago. I am a winter season, and so a lot of my color choices in my palette tend to be within that color season. So when I'm mixing and matching patterns, it tends to be a lot easier because I know that the colors I'm choosing or the colors that I'm gravitating to more will tend to be more harmonious with each other. It also helps to know what your neutrals are. So for me, it's white, black, navy, grey, and once I know those things, those colors can be the grounding colors in any pattern mix. So for example, with stripes, a monochrome stripe, a black and white stripe, that sort of color palette in a contrast fabric works really well for me against many of the other prints in all kinds of different colors in my palette that I know there'll be a good chance of them mixing well. The other thing I will say is that don't feel you need to restrict your pattern mixing to wovens like cotton dresses or whatever. You can also mix up things in your knits. So if you're sewing a sweatshirt, you might want to think about doing a contrast neck ribbing or cuffs. This is something that I've done a lot across some of the more casual garments I've made, like joggers and sweatshirts. I'll sometimes go for a little contrast striped cuff or something like that. You can also even cut up all bits of knitwear, so all jumpers, stripy jumpers, plain jumpers. You can actually cut up knitwear and put them back together, and you can pattern mix that way as well. Remember that you can also combine this whole technique of pattern mixing with some of the other decorative, creative ideas that I've shared within this video series, like the decorative stitching techniques and also sewing with trims. There are several garments I've made where I have utilized all 3 of these. I've used pattern mixing, I've used decorative stitching, and I've incorporated trims all in one single garment. It might be a little bit extra for some people, but I think it works. So just play around, have some fun, and see what takes your fancy. If you would like to see more videos like this, I have 2 more videos in this creative sewing series, which you can also find on my channel. I hope you found that useful, and I hope it gave you lots of ideas and inspiration that you can use to elevate the creativity in your next sewing project and help you to have the eye to choose the right prints that you can put together into your own garments. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a quick thumbs up, drop me a comment to let me know, and subscribe so that you don't miss out on the next 2 videos in my creative sewing series. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.